let's look at the best fantasy books that I've read. So, hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Leah, and today I will talk about the best fantasy books that I've read ever. So these are the best books of all time for me, and it is a top 10. So yeah, this is going to be the start of a rather long series, just going through different genres and showing you which books I enjoyed the most. So yeah, we're starting with fantasy, but there will be other genres and also things like witchy books or books with mermaids in it, just besides the normal genres like horror and science fiction and so on. So yeah, I hope you'll enjoy it. I won't repeat a single book in a different genre. So yeah, it's been hard to actually pick 10 books for each category, and yeah, I hope you'll enjoy the fantasy one now. Okay, so these books are actually ranked, which is just going to make it even more difficult for me, but I think it's just fun to rank them. But these are all very good books, so just because the next book will be on spot number 10 doesn't mean it is not a good book. Because I've read hundreds of fantasy books and this is number 10, so that's very, very good. So let's start with that one. So coming up at number 10 is Dress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I really enjoyed this one, but yeah, towards the end it was a little too weird for me, too sci-fi, which just didn't make really sense for me, because it just felt like a very cozy, cute fantasy, and then this weird stuff happened. But yeah, everything else was spectacular and a very, very cute adventure. Nothing more to say. I'm not going to talk about what these books are about if they are rather well known, just because the video would be way too long. I just want to make some short videos showcasing you some of my favorite books. It's called Weather Mages of Mistral, I believe. I'll show you the English book right here. And yeah, I don't think many people have read these, and they would be considered romantasy, so there's a huge part about the romance in it, and I think some people don't like the romance. I personally did enjoy it, and yeah, I like the fantasy aspects with all these elemental stuff, and just reading about these different sisters in every book, finding their love and just having to live in that fantasy world. So yeah, I really liked it. Why is it only on number 10? Well, that is number 10, right? Number 9. It's because the series has never finished. Like, the first 2 books are out and the 3rd book like never showed up. I don't know if it's even planned at this point, because we've waited so many years. But I mean, there are other series, I'm not gonna mention which one. You all know which one I'm talking about. That is kind of never to be finished. I don't know. So it is really enjoyable, and I don't have to have a ending for every single sister. But yeah, it is a shame, because I did enjoy these books and I would love to read more. So yeah, that's that. So book number 8 is Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson. I've read all of her books now, I think, just waiting for a new one to come out, and this is by far my favorite of all the books that she's written. I did like Enchantment of Ravens, that was very entertaining, don't get me wrong, Didn't like Sorcery of Thorns as much, but yeah, Vespertine is amazing. It's much darker than the other books, and I don't know, I just liked the action parts in this one. I liked the characters much more, and the plot was interesting, and yeah, the atmosphere just much darker, much more my taste. I think it's about a nun, and yeah, she's discovering demon magic, and I think she will be possessed by a demon to wield very powerful magic, and yeah, it's just very interesting as a concept. I know there are other books with similar topics now coming out, like demon magic, fantasy stuff, whatever, and yeah, it's just something I think I enjoy, but this was the first time I've ever read about it, so yeah, highly recommend this one. This next book is a binder of 2 books, so I think it's a duology. It's by Marion Zimmer Bradley, and it's called The Fall of Atlantis. So yeah, it's kind of mythology or historical fiction-y, but yeah, it does read a lot of like fantasy because there is some magic in it. And yeah, if you know me, you know I love mythology, I love historical fiction, and I love fantasy, and this is just the perfect combination of all 3 of them. And yeah, just Atlantis is a very interesting topic in itself, and yeah, it's been a while since I read the story, and I couldn't find the physical copy even. I don't know where it is, but yeah, I just loved this book. I am looking forward to reading even more by Marion Zimmer Bradley. This has been the first book or books that I've read by her, and yeah, it just seems to be a very interesting writer. Could be a favorite of mine, who knows, we will see in the future. And yeah, this is part of my top 10 as well. It's Etiquette and Espionage. I just picked this first book in the series, but it's representing the whole universe that Gail Carriger writes in. I've only read this series and the first one in a novella series so far, and there are more books, but yeah, I already love the series so much. As it says on the cover, it's the perfect steampunk version of Harry Potter. I don't know if I would compare to Harry Potter that much, because it's not really about learning spells. Like, I don't know where that came from, but yeah, we have different creatures in it as well. So we have werewolves, we have vampires, and also the historical aspect. It's a steampunk version, and yeah, it's about a finishing school for girls, just learning how to be proper in handling balls and men and so on, like how to be polite, how to deal with, what are they called, aventail, it's in French, what the fuck, like how to dress in certain circumstances and all this stuff, but also learning about how to murder people. So yeah, Etiquette and Espionage sums it up quite well. I really love it. It's a middle grade or young adult series, so don't expect it to be too adult, but yeah, I think it's just very fun. I love every single moment. I love the characters, and yeah, we also learn a lot about the vampires and the werewolves in it, and also about the boys. They have a school of their own, and yeah, there's also some romance. So yeah, it just has everything, and I don't see it often on BookTube, which is a shame. I really love the series, so yeah, I would love to see more people read it. Next up is yet another book by Brandon Sanderson. So we're now at spot number 5, right? So this is his standalone book for now. I think he has planned to write more books in this, well, series, I guess. So, but now it's a standalone, and you can read it as a standalone. It does end in a satisfying way, and yeah, I think it's also his debut novel, right? The first one he ever wrote. I don't know. Most people think it's good, but he has far better books. I think that this is spectacular. Like, I think it's better than Mistborn. That's a rather unpopular opinion, so don't trust it too much. But yeah, I just love it. It's almost like a zombie book, but made into epic fantasy with magic and really morally great characters, and you read from 3 different perspectives, and there's also a very, very interesting romance in it, I believe. And yeah, I just love the atmosphere of these zombie-like people and how they are trapped in a different part of the city and just ignored, like they just have to live by themselves and try to survive in some way. And yeah, it's just so cool. I love the magic system, but Brandon Sanderson always has interesting magic systems. That's not the problem. I really like that this one is not as action-packed as, for example, Mistborn, and it's also adult for sure, not young adult like Mistborn, so maybe that's why I enjoyed it much more. But yeah, I love Elantris, and I do hope that he writes more books in the series. So yeah, it's a standalone, you can read it. It's not too thick, and yeah, just fun and original. Next up, this is the first book in the Grisha trilogy, right? It doesn't really have another name. Was it just Shadow and Bone? Whatever, it's by Lee Bardugo, and it's part of the Grishaverse. So this book does represent her whole universe. I'm including Six of Crows and what's the other one called? Kingdom of Scars, Rule of Wolves in it, and also the graphic novel and these stories about the saints and these fairy tale-esque things. Like every single book. I love them all. Okay, Six of Crows not so much, unpopular opinion again. I love Grisha, and I love, like, I already forgot the name. Kingdom of Scars? Yes. And the other ones, just Six of Crows is my favorite. Again, it's rather action-packed, about heists, about this humorous gang. Similar to Mistborn, just not my type of thing, but everything else. Love the Russian atmosphere, love the Avatar-esque fantasy, and just there are so many interesting characters, and they will just evolve so much, and you read from so many perspectives, and yeah, it's just fast-paced, fun stuff. And there would be another rather huge universe by Philip Pullman, starting with The Golden Compass. It's a middle grade book, but the whole universe evolves into much more than that. Like in the last books, the main character is an adult, so yeah, it's very similar to Harry Potter in that sense, that you can grow up with the character. So yeah, I've not read it when I was a child, because I don't know, I just didn't. I've read Harry Potter when I was a teenager as well, so didn't start it when it came out. But yeah, it's a very, very cool universe again, and it's very, very complex, and it also talks a lot about science fiction and also just scientific concepts that are really, really interesting. I even read about non-fiction stuff that Philip Pullman was inspired by, and yeah, the religion part is very interesting as well. It's inspired by Narnia, for example, and takes some inspiration from that, but also just in general talking about life, morality, death, angels, God, that kind of stuff. And yeah, even just ignoring all of that, it's a very interesting adventure itself about Lyra, who just discovers magic, and yet she has this shape-shifting animal spirit every kid in her world is growing up with that animal spirit thing. And yeah, but there are different worlds. Like in the second book we learn about the world that is very similar to our own, so yeah, there's portal stuff in it as well. And yeah, I was planning to also show you my top 10 portal fiction books, but yeah, they are all in other categories, so it doesn't really make sense. I would repeat myself, and yeah, this would be one of them for sure. I just love portal fiction, I love science fiction, I love fantasy, I love magic, I love animal companions, and it has it all. It's just very, very fascinating. And this is almost the best fantasy book or fantasy series I've ever read. Almost, but not quite. At this point you could probably guess which would be the number one spot. But yeah, let's talk about this one first. This is the first book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. This is the German edition. And although I didn't like every single book in the series as a whole is just amazing. Like the plot twist at the end of the last book, it's genius, really. Never read about anything like it, and there's just so much stuff that you could talk about, like in an academic sense. And yeah, it's much more complex than you would think, and it's not really just fantasy. It's very genre bending, similar to Philip Pullman's books. Like, it's fantasy, it's science fiction, there's also portal fiction stuff in it. A lot of horror in it, there's even romance. So yeah, it's just so cool. And every single book reads so different from each other, which is also why I sometimes didn't enjoy a book. But yeah, just having a different journey in each one, and also just learning more about the interesting characters in it. It's just very, very cool, and I could see myself rereading it in the future. Like, just to be part of the quartet again, and just to be on the journey, even if it's kind of pointless. But yeah, it's about the journey, not the end in this one, and I think that's very, very cool how Stephen King wrote about it. So yeah, you don't have to read any other book by Stephen King to enjoy the series at all. I was nervous going into it because I have not read some of the classics, like The Stand. It's not really spoiling anything. You really don't have to read anything else. Just go into it. And I even enjoyed the first book. I gave the first book 4 stars. So yeah, I know some people hate the first book and don't move on. And yeah, some people even hate the whole series. That's fine, everyone has different tastes. I didn't like Mistborn, so... but you could try to read it. It's really, really cool. If you like fantasy, horror, science fiction, and just complex stuff. And also westerns. Sure, I didn't mention that. It's very much inspired by Wild West stuff, which I typically do not enjoy, but it's great in this series. I don't care. And then, coming at number 1, the very first book in a very, very good series that's not finished yet, but maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't care. It's the best series of all time anyway for me. And who would have guessed? It is, of course, A Game of Thrones. Obviously, I had to pick it as my number 1 fantasy book. I just love it so much. And yeah, I would love to finish the series eventually, but even if I don't care. I will reread the series over and over again. And this is the very beautiful illustrated edition, which I haven't read yet, so I'm very excited to dive into it, just in a different way to experience the story, just somewhat new. And yeah, everyone knows what A Game of Thrones is about, right? You've either seen the series or read the books, and yeah, it's just epic fantasy at its best, with so many interesting perspectives and so many violence, death, but also magic and dragons and just plain life and war, and I don't know, I just love it. I've also read other things by George R. R. Martin, so it's not that I only enjoy A Game of Thrones. I really love his short stories, and the book that he wrote with Lisa Tuttle was very cool as well. Not a favorite at all, but very enjoyable nonetheless. So yeah, George R. R. Martin is just a very good writer, but well, he is focusing his attention on other things, but that's totally fine. And yeah, Game of Thrones is just the best. I do have a lot of epic fantasy series still on my TBR, so this list could change very quickly, and yeah, I might have to update it in a year or two if it changes too much. But yeah, for now that is it. These are the 10 best books in the fantasy genre for me. Yeah, just leave me a comment with your top 1 or even top 10 if you would like to share that as well in the comments below. I would be very interested to learn about some other top 10 or favorite books. And yeah, just tell me if you disagree with some of them. Like, for example, what was it, the Mistral Weather Mages? Yeah, I know some people would not consider these as top 10 books, but I don't care. That's what I enjoy, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and look forward to seeing even more videos like it. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and take care. Happy reading. Bye.